Hey, it's Hunt. You found Hunt on Saints. We're talking black and gold football. Do us a favor. Hit the like button, share your comments below, and hit that subscription button so you can get all of our content. Enjoy. Free agency is on the move in the National Football League, and the Saints have been involved a little bit here. Luke Johnson covers the black and gold for The Advocate and joins us every Thursday on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Luke, how are you?
Hunt, my guy, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, man.
Absolutely, our pleasure. First thing I want to talk about is Ryan Ramczyk. They're a little bit of a restructure to the contract, get the Saints in cap compliance. What does it mean?
Well, it means that it wasn't a restructure. It was Ramczyk basically taking a pay cut, and I think the interesting thing is he's a third player who's done that in the last couple of days. And I think if you were to just go by what you're hearing on social media from the fan base here, is that the players hate the organization, and Dennis Allen has completely lost control of it. Nobody trusts Mickey Loomis, and I just think that I don't want to go out and go overboard on giving those guys a bunch of credit. They haven't been producing a lot of winning seasons lately, but look, I think that runs pretty far counter to that. You got three pretty notable guys taking a pay cut, and they got something out of it too. Ramczyk got some more guarantees. Matthew and Demario Davis got another year on their contract, but I think it's notable that you're seeing guys take less money to stay here and to kind of help the team get into a position where they can add more players. And with Ramczyk specifically, there's obviously the concerns about his health. I think it was important for the Saints to be able to touch this contract up and to get him to count less against the cap without adding to the figure for next year. I think that was the big question going into this. Like, would they have to push money into future years and make his cap at something like $33 million next year, which didn't really feel sustainable.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So how do you feel about him being the Saints' right tackle next year?
I feel better about that than I do at left tackle.
Yeah,
I think Ramczyk, even at even at kind of this diminished version of himself that we've seen in the last couple of years, is still a pretty good football player. And I think obviously it's just, is he going to be there for the full 17 games? And I don't think if you're the Saints you can count on that. So you need to you need to seriously address the offensive line this offseason. Through the draft and probably through free agency. Do they trust Landon Young to be the guy out there if Ramczyk can't make it through? I don't know. I think they need to seriously consider, and I'm sure they are, taking an offensive tackle with their first pick. And continuing to add to it from there, because there's just so many questions about the two really, really important pieces on this offense right now.
Yeah, no doubt. You mentioned left tackle, and it appears that Andrus Peat will not be back, although I don't think anything official on that front yet. But what does that mean for New Orleans, and what do you think about the Peat situation and why they would not bring him back?
Well, I think to me it probably just boiled down to what Andrus Peat wanted to make this year. And really, realistically, for the Saints to re-sign them, they would have had to sign them before yesterday, because yesterday's contract voided, and that kicked in $13.4 million in dead cap money. So they're going to carry that regardless of what happens. And when just thinking about this logically, if they're already carrying $13 million for him, they're probably only going to be willing to pay him a certain amount of money because he's already accounting for that much. They don't want to have him count for $18 million in the salary cap this year. So if they would have been able to re-sign him before the contract voided, they would have been able to push that dead cap hit down the road a little bit and lessened his cap hit for this year, and it would have made sense. But now that's kind of off the table. It's hard to imagine him being back. And that kind of goes into this whole thing. He was a really valuable piece, even if he wasn't playing it really at a Pro Bowl level. He could play guard, and he could play tackle, and he could play 4 different spots in the offensive line if you really needed him to. And I think he actually played pretty good at left tackle this year. So it just kind of goes back to it, man. They're going to have to address it. I don't think they can just count on James Hurst being the guy at left tackle, even though he's started a lot of games for him there. They definitely can't just bank on Trevor Penning suddenly figuring it out. It's going to have to be something that they address, and it would not be a surprise if he can do it at number 14.
Do you believe the Saints have any confidence that Trevor Penning is going to be a useful piece on the football team?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do. I just don't think that it is the type of confidence that you can just be like, yeah, we're rolling with them. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's different. I think they're like, okay, we know he's a talented player. You know, we've got two really highly respected offensive line coaches in the building now, and John Benton and Rick Dennison, and two guys who've historically had a lot of success coaching guys at the NFL level. And you know, this is finally for the first time in his career he's going to get an off season. You know, he was training for the draft, and you don't really work on the fundamentals of your game when you're doing that. You're trying to run a fast 40 and bench a bunch of reps and do things well at the combine drills. And then last year he was rehabilitating an injury the whole time. And when you're looking at a player, I mean, physically he's got everything. You know, the gifts are all there, but he's really technically deficient. So I would expect to see him, at some of these kind of high-profile offensive line training grounds, the OL masterminds and stuff like that this offseason, and really working on his technique. And I think they think he can still be a good player. Like, they're not giving up on him by any stretch. But again, this is just like you can't just like bank on the light switch flipping on for him. Like, you have to have a fallback, and it really you might have to have an option one and have Penning be your option two.
All right, some other news here. We're chatting with Luke Johnson of The Advocate, covering the Saints as the team building and roster building portion of this offseason continues. It appears Chase Young is going to give the New Orleans Saints a visit. Does he make sense on the Saints' defensive front?
Yeah, I mean, I think he makes total sense. Like, I think when you're kind of mapping out how this could happen at the start of the league year, and you're looking at who's available, like he is like kind of the ideal, He's a player who's probably not going to command like this huge salary because he's just been, kind of inconsistent. He's dealt with injuries in his first 4 years, but he 100% fits their prototype, whether you're talking about athletically or his physical build. And frankly, they like taking shots on guys who were, big time prospects who, for whatever reason, haven't panned out. And it's not like Chase Young has been a complete bust. I mean, the guy was a rookie of the year, and he had 5 sacks in 7 games with the 49ers last year. He had a sack in the Super Bowl. But, it definitely, he had this meteoric rise coming into the league, and then he flattened out, and then he kind of fell off the cliff a little bit. So, if the Saints can get him at something that is, a very team-friendly deal that gives him an opportunity to kind of maximize his potential and go earn more money next year, I think that makes a lot of sense. They're going to have to compete for him, though. And some of the teams they're competing against have capability of offering him a lot more money if they really want him. I think that both the Titans and the Panthers are set up to meet with him, and those two teams rank in like the top 5 in available cap space. So it's just going to kind of depend on what Chase Young wants and what the Saints can afford.
So when you see Willie Gay sign a 1-year deal, and you see the Saints move on from Andrus Peat and not want to add to that contract, big picture, like T-Bob was talking this morning, he kind of thinks that they may be inching toward a little bit of a reset here as opposed to doing the same thing they've always done and just trying to add. Do you see it that way, that they may not be as aggressive right now?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, this is just kind of their MO. This is what they've done for several years. I mean, as much as everybody likes to, give 2 birds to the rest of the league and say salary cap doesn't matter, like it does for the Saints. They have to wait until the initial phase of free agency plays out, and then they got to look for bargains. It's what they've done forever. Even some of their most high profile signings of the last couple of years, that you look at, Tyrann Mathieu was signed in May after the draft. Jarvis Landry was signed in May after the draft. Jared Cook was, mid to late March. Emmanuel Sanders was close to April. This is just what they do. I do think that there's going to be a little bit of a retooling on the roster this year, just because of all the stuff that they said this offseason, where they just kind of felt the culture wasn't right. And I think that's why you see some guys getting shipped off and not retained. But I don't think that's going to affect how they're actually building the roster. I don't think they're looking at this like we need to take a step back and have like a soft reset here. I think they're really just this is just kind of their standard MO, and I think we'll see a couple signings in the next week or two.
Nathan Peterman appears to be one of those. Where do you handicap the Haener-Peterman backup race?
I think the fact that they're going out and getting somebody like Nathan Peterman instead of somebody like Ryan Tannehill or Jimmy G just says they're feeling pretty confident about Haener.
Yeah.
They used a 4th-round pick on him last year, and he was inactive for basically every game. I think he was the emergency third quarterback for one. They got to see what he can do. There's a possibility that by the end of training camp, some veteran with some skins in the wall and some starting level experience comes available. But I think they're taking just a little bit of a different tack with their quarterback position this offseason, where we've seen for the last 6 years they've had a starter or a player with high level starting experience as their number 2, whether it's Bridgewater or Jameis or Andy Dalton. I think they're going to kind of go away from that, and they're going to let Haener try to take that spot, and it's why they picked him in the 4th round last year.
Luke, we appreciate some time, man. Have a great weekend.
Pleasure, man. Talk to you soon.
Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.